Hey everyone, welcome to this first video of a series of video I will be recording explaining how you can connect Bubble and Xano professionally. The reason I'm recording this series of videos or I'm creating this guide is because I have seen many tutorials out there, but they just show you how you can connect and authenticate users in the Bubble side stuff. I'm sure that there's a lot of use cases where that is good enough, but I wanted to show you a methodology I use to connect properly both tools, Xano and Bubble, but at the same time, a methodology you can use to keep a healthy application, manage different versions and environments in both Bubble and Xano, and how you can authenticate differently depending of your use case. How can you can authenticate users taking advantage of the built-in system of Bubble, but at the same time the security tokens and stuff of Xano. So in this first part, what I will do is I will show you how you can set up Xano and Bubble. And then I will create a sample endpoint and it will show you how you can keep synchronize both the development and live versions of Bubble with the test and development and live branches of Xano. So without further delay, let's jump into it. Uh, First of all, I would like to review with you a few concepts I think are important. The first one is that Bob is the test version which is used by Bubble. I don't know if you know this, but you of course have the development version in Bubble, right? But actually, development is just the display name of the test version of Bubble. And the way you can check this is here in the URL. Here you have, as you can see, a version test, which is actually the real name of this environment or this version. Actually, here what I'm displaying is the app version variable that Bubble offers, as you can see in here, version app version. So it's important to be aware of this because we will be using this variable a lot. This is not something I built; it's something that Bubble offers. If you didn't know about it, so yeah, here I have the staging version. You can see version staging, and you can see that it's displaying staging in the app version variable, and same for live. So why I might I wanted to explain this to you because sadly Bubble regarding the version test is do not offer like a flexible um, way to manage this naming differently. You will have to put some conditionals if you want to call it development and stuff like that, etc. I hope this makes sense to you. So I want you to be aware of this because we are going to be creating some branches. I will explain what a branch is later, but I will be creating branches with the same naming as the Bubble versions we will have in our front end. So yeah, that I wanted to start with that, but let's jump into the setup of Xano. So, as you may, if you have used Bubble in the past, you know that Bubble has a live version, development or test version, as I just mentioned, and each version has its own database. They share the same schema. They could share the same schema, but each database contains its own that data. So what we are going to do here in Xano is more or less the same. We want to have a different data source that is the test data source and the live data source. How do we do that? Simple. We just go to this database tab, and here we press on currently using live data, and we press on this add test data source. So this will be shown for us, and you just have to click on this button in here. With that, you already created your test data source, and actually we're using it right now. So now when we are developing in Bubble or and in Xano, we want to use this test data source. And when we are in production, we want to use the live data source. That way, we will make sure that the live data source data won't be contaminated with testing data or development data. So that's from that part. And now let's review what are branches. Branches are like versions in Bubble, but they work slightly different. Um, So what I will do is that I will create a new test branch, which actually is like my development version of Bubble. And from here I can create different stuff. I can create API calls, API endpoints, I can create tasks, I can create functions, add-ons, and my version will keep all of this in here. But when I create a new branch, it will create a copy of this branch I'm working on, and then I could work with that branch separately without interfering with what I'm doing here. So this is a big thing because this way we can use the test branch for development and then create a staging branch for when we want to test the application. And we can synchronize this staging branch with a staging version in Bubble, and at the same time we can create the live branch that will be synchronized with the live version of Bubble. I hope that makes sense to you, but I will show you in shortly how this will work. So don't 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 be too confused. We will review this later. So I just created this test branch. As I said, this will be like my development environment. So I will be working on this right now. Um, what we have for the moment is that we have this database in here. I will change to live so that way I can edit this schema. And yeah, I have this table called sample data, which contains three different columns of text. The first one is called test data, staging data, and lab data. So what I will do now is that I will create a new API call that will populate this table. But depending of the version I'm working on in my Bubble app, I will be populating this column, or this column. So just as an example, if I'm in staging version and I send a call to Xano, I want to populate this column. And if I'm in my live version, then I want to populate this column. And the same for the test or development version. So let's create the endpoint then. Here I have a demo folder I will use. I will add some CRUD, sample data, and save. Yeah, this endpoint will create for me the records, but I will remove the link in the inputs because I want to pass a simple and single input called data, which is basically a string or text that I will be storing in one column or the other. So for now, what we will do is that we will hide these input fields, staying data and leave data, and we are going to populate only the test data. So we are going to save that. And yeah, that's mostly it for now here in Xano. Let's see what we can do in Bubble. So in Bubble, as I said, we have also versions that we are going to be using. For now, I have created an extra version called staging. This is a copy of the current version I have here in development or test. And what we will do here is we are going to create the API connection. Um, just for you to know, if you have never used versions in before in Bubble, you can create a new one pressing on here, and this you can put any name you want. Let's say staging 2, and this will create a new version of my application. You can use this to create your own staging version, but for now it's not really relevant. We will use this later. Let's just focus on the API connection thing. So what I will do here is that I will add a new API call or any API group, let's call it like that. Just ignore this one I have used before, so just ignore it. I will create a second one called Xano 2. And I will not use any kind of authentication yet because I just want to show you how you can connect or how you can address the different branches in Xano, and at the same time uh, uh, push data to the different data sources. And for that, what I will do is I will post data, sample data, and this will be a post call as I have configured here in my Xano API endpoint. And I will copy this endpoint URL and I will paste it in here. Now, as you can see, this here, Xano automatically, as I'm working in the test branch, automatically added this colon and test text into my URL. So we want to replace that with a variable which we can create by placing a name in here. I will use environment and put it with, or wrap it between square brackets. That way I will create a new variable that I can expose to the front end. In this case, it will uncheck private, so it will be exposed to the front end, and I will allow blank. The reason I want to allow blank is because when I'm in my live version, I won't pass anything to this variable and I want it to remain blank. So that way, um, it will address by default my live branch in Xano. If you don't place anything here, if this is empty, you will be addressing your default live branch in Xano. So that's what we want to do when we are in the live version. That's why we are allowing blank in this case. Now I want to add some headers. The header I want to add is for the data source. So the key we are going to use is x data source. And yeah, that's it. And we will not make it private because we want to expose this to the front end as well. And finally, just to add a body to our call. Remember that we place the input data, and then I will put here something like some data. And yeah, that's it. That's the body of our call. So with this call, what we are going to do is that we are going to send a webhook or send an API call to this endpoint. We are in this environment input or environment variable. We are going to tell Xano which branch we want to address or we are calling. And with X data source, we are going to tell Xano which data source we want to use, the live data source or the test data source. So just to test this out, let's use, oh, sorry, I forgot the colon. You have to put colon, then the app version name here, and I will address the test branch, which is the one I created, remember? Um, and here I will use the test data source as well. Yeah, that being said, yeah, for some reason my uh, my face is not showing up anymore. Yeah, okay, doesn't matter. Let's just keep moving forward. So as I said, the environment will tell Xano which branch I'm addressing, and the X data source will tell which data source I want to address to. So in this case, when you input an environment variable, or in the URL endpoint URL, you have to put the colons and then test. But for the X data source, it just you just have to put test and that's it. Here in body type, well, it's JSON. That's normal. There's my JSON. I'm going to pass this data to the endpoint. And one thing I would suggest you to do always with Xano is to mark this checkbox in here. Include errors in response. The reason is because we will see this later in my third video where I create an application and share with you some tips I have. But this will allow you to handle better the errors in your front end, and actually you will be able to tell what to do next if your error is because, I don't know, your application timed out, or because you have an authentication error, or maybe because there's some condition that it's not being met. And yeah, that's it. So what we will see here is that once we trigger this, actually I have to go to the test data source. A record is going to be created here because when I initialize what I'm doing is I'm sending the call to my backend and then I receive the response. So my endpoint is creating a new record in this table. So let's do it. And there you go. Okay, it's initialized. Yeah, everything is cool. Let's save that. And now let me refresh my test database, and there you go. As you can see, it populated the test data, and that's because I was addressing my test branch, which is the only one I have set up right now. And if you remember, my endpoint was populating only that field. So let's create different versions of these same endpoints, but in different branches to see how this behaves. Let's add a new branch. I'm going to copy this current branch I'm working on, and I will call it staging. Notice that I'm using the same the same naming that Bubble is using for their app, for its app versions. Um, this is important and something we will take advantage of. So make sure that you are using the same names as your app versions in Bubble. And yeah, let's create a new one. We will call it live for now. There you go. So we have these three branches created, and what we're going to do is that we are going to edit every endpoint in these branches, but we are going to populate the corresponding data field. So if we are in the live branch, we will want to populate this uh, in here, this field, the live data field. And if I go back to staging again at the branch and go to API, present here and here, here you go. I hide this, I show this, and then I populate this. Okay, cool. So now my branches are depending on the branch I address, it will populate one column of the other. If I call the test branch, I will populate the test data column. This, if I call the staging branch, then I populate the staging data column, and if I call the live branch, I will populate the uh, live data column. So yeah, I already initialized this. Actually, I won't call anymore my Xano endpoint from here. What I will do is that I will change this as to action, use as action, and I will add the logic in the front end. So we will see how you can connect, how you can address, depending the version you are previewing or working on, you will be able to address the corresponding branch. Um, so yeah, let's get started. I will present this start edit workflow. This will create the trigger event of clicking, blah, blah, blah. And what I want to do is I want to use this Xano2 call I just created. And here I'm going to fill it with different conditionals. So remember, if it's the environment, we are addressing with the environment variable, we are addressing the branch itself, the branches. So what I want to do here is that I will first check if this isn't the live version. So if it isn't the live version, that means I'm working in the test version, or I'm previewing the test version, the staging version, or any other version I have created manually in Bubble. So what I want to do is I want to put the columns, and then I want to add my app version. And notice that this app version, as I said, will match your has to match your branch version or your branch in Xano. So here this is test. This is the app version variable in the version test or development version. It has to match the naming of my test branch. The same for staging, but for live is different actually, because for live we are not going to pass the app version name. We are going to leave it empty. The reason is that if we don't populate anything here, this will be blank, and by default, Xano will address your live endpoint, or I mean your live branch. So you don't have to pass anything. You can name this endpoint. Actually, you can name this branch whatever you want. You can put any name you want in here. But once it sets live, it won't matter the naming of this branch in specific. So let's do that right away. Actually, it's in live, so we don't forget to do this later. And yeah, that's it. And what else? Yeah, we were working the workflow. So yeah, that's for the environment. Hope that makes sense. Remember, if you are working in a different version than the live version, then you have to input the columns and the app version variable that Bubble offers. But if it is the live version, then you just leave it empty. Don't do that. Nothing there. Now, for this X data source, it works different because now we are addressing either the live data source or the test data source. So what I'm going to check here, if it is in the live version, and if it is in the live version, I'm going to format as text. If it is in the live version, that means we're in the test, staying, or any manually created version. We're going to hard write test, which is the name of the data source test. And if it is the live version, then I'm going to type live, and that's it. That's all you need. Now, keep in mind that you will be doing this with all your API calls you make to Xano. So I suggest you to put some kind of variable in the front end in a hidden, in a invisible pop-up, have a group or something that represent the environment, and you put this same logic in there or the same text in there, and the same for the X status, or you can have a variable in Bubble, so you don't have to put this every time and you just can refer to the same variable for each call. That just a tip I have for you. But for the sake of this exercise, we are going to just use the logic directly in the call. We are not going to touch this because, yeah, it doesn't matter. uh, and yeah, that's it. One last thing I want to do is I want to show an alert I have in here telling me that it is the data was pushed successfully. And yeah, that's it. So I'm going to refresh this. This is my test version. So now it should be working. Just to test it out to make sure that it's working, let's go to my database. This is the test data. So I'm going to be here and I'm going to press in this button and success. Now I will refresh this and there should be a second row in here. There you go. Now, we want to make sure that now we know it is working the test version or development version, but let's push these changes to the staging uh, environment, and also let's publish the changes to live as well. Okay, cool. Oh, I can close that. It's bugged. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to press on this branch in here. Actually, this is a merge symbol or icon, and it is asking me if I want to add the changes done to development to staging. I will confirm this, and now my application will be or my bubble editor will be refreshed. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now I can see in the staging version that I have the code we just set up with the success alert and everything. One last thing I will do is that I'm going to deploy this to live, deploy, blah, 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 and there you go. So now I have here my live version. I mean my preview of the version stage, the staging version and the live version and the version test. So if everything is working properly, when I click this button in these three tabs, I will be creating three new records in my database, but they will populate different columns. So let's do that. But first of all, let's clear this just to make sure that it's not confusing for anyone. We're going to reset the ID back to 1. And now let's do this. Okay, here it is. So first of all, version test, success, version staging, success, and then version live, success. Okay, cool. Now I will refresh this and notice this. Only two data things has been created. Why is that? Well, if you remember, I wanted to address the live data source when I was in the live version of my application. So in theory, this should be living in this record should be have been created in my live database. So let's check that. Okay, I just change it to live, sample data, and there you go. There's the create a row. And just to make sure that I'm not cheating here, I just pushed it again, and there you go. We have created a new record. So essentially, if you think about it, I haven't actually uh, done any changes to address this differently. I mean, the setup in my three versions is the same. We are using the same variables and stuff, but it is addressing different branches, and at the same time, it's addressing a different data source. So this way, we have automatized how our development version and testing or staging version and live version works, and are synchronized with my Xano setup. And yeah, that's it for this video. Only one thing I want to review with you again is that the process I usually follow when developing is that I always have a staging version that I will be updating constantly. So, for instance, let's say that I make a change to this branch, test branch. I know, and let's say I go to the API and to this demo, blah blah, blah, and I edit this endpoint and I add this. This is not or something like that. Oh my bad. And this isn't either. I can place. Oh my bad. I can place anything in there. So now I made these changes into my development environment, but I want to pass this information or these changes to the staging. Sadly, currently there's no like a direct way to merge branches or push changes from one branch to the other. So what I usually do is that I either rename this or delete it. Let's delete it for now. Staging to confirm. What I do is that I create a new branch called staging, but I always create it from the development branch or test branch. That way, we make sure that the lasting updates are in there and press create. And now I have updated my staging environment. Now, what happened if I don't know? I now this staging environment has been approved. It passed all the QA test and is the new stable version and I want to push it or release it to live. What I will do is I just create a new branch. Let's call it something like, I don't know, live two or whatever. Again, it doesn't matter what the name of the live branch is going to be. It just you just have to make sure that you set it to live. And there you go. And there it is. And now I will present this and I will set this live. Now, just to test this out, I will push new data, and now instead of populating just the third column of my table in the live data, it will input the changes I made to the API, and those changes I did to the API or to the endpoint. I mean, uh, are now updated or propagated to the staging and the live version. Hope that makes sense. I hope this was useful to you to understand how branches and data sources work. I invite you to review my or to take my blog post because I explain it in more detail and slower and with more information in there. So yeah, if you want to, please take a look at my blog post, and I will try to make the other videos shorter. But I think there's a lot to process. So I hope again it was helpful for you. In my next video, we will be talking about authentication methods and how do you can take advantage of the bubble built-in system, user system, and mix it with a token system of Xano, or even use different approaches to handle authorizations to your back, the authorization method to your backend. That's it.